was walking home from school one day when I took a shortcut through the park. I didn't usually take the shortcut, but I was running late and I thought it would save me some time. As I was walking through the park, I heard a strange noise. It sounded like someone was laughing, but it was a high-pitched, maniacal laugh. I stopped and looked around, but I didn't see anyone. I started walking again, but the noise kept getting louder. I was starting to get scared, but I didn't want to turn around and run. I thought that would just make the noise come after me. Finally, I reached the end of the park and I could see my house in the distance. I started to run, and the noise was right behind me. I could hear it getting closer and closer. I finally reached my house and I burst through the door. I slammed the door shut and locked it, and I leaned against it, panting. I could still hear the noise outside, but it was getting fainter. I slowly turned around and looked around my living room. It was empty, but I still felt like I was being watched. I knew that the noise was still out there, and I didn't know what it was or who it was. I went to the window and looked out, but I couldn't see anything. The park was empty, and the noise was gone. I didn't know what to do. I was scared, and I didn't know who to tell. I decided to just go to bed and hope that I would forget about it in the morning. But I didn't forget about it. I couldn't stop thinking about the noise, and I couldn't stop wondering what it was. I was afraid to go back to the park, but I knew that I had to find out what was making that noise. The next day, I went back to the park. I didn't go through the shortcut this time. I went around the long way. I didn't want to hear that noise again. I reached the park and I looked around. It was empty, just like it had been the day before. I started to walk through the park, and I listened carefully for any strange noises. I was about to give up when I heard it. The noise was coming from the bushes. I slowly walked over to the bushes and peered inside. There, sitting in the bushes, was a clown. He was wearing a red and white striped suit, and he had a big, floppy hat on his head. He was also wearing a mask, but I could see his eyes. They were dark and empty, and they stared right at me. I screamed and ran away. I didn't stop running until I was home. I locked the door and I didn't go outside again for a week. I still don't know what the clown was doing in the park or why he was making that noise. I've always felt a strange presence in the house I grew up in. It's not necessarily an evil presence, but it's definitely there. I can feel it watching me, especially at night. One night, I was downstairs getting a glass of water when I saw a shadow figure in the dining room. It was tall and thin, with a black cloak that billowed out behind it. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure turned and looked at me, and I could see its eyes glowing red in the darkness. I screamed and ran back upstairs, but the figure followed me. I could hear its footsteps on the stairs, getting closer and closer. I slammed the door to my room shut and locked it, but I knew it wouldn't be enough to keep the figure out. I huddled in bed, too scared to move. I could hear the figure scratching at the door, trying to get in. I knew it was only a matter of time before it broke through. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash, and the door burst open. The figure stood in the doorway, its eyes still glowing red. It raised its hand, and I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I gasped and clutched at my wound, feeling the blood seeping through my fingers. The figure smiled, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. It took a step towards me, and I knew I was going to die. I closed my eyes and waited for the end. But then, I heard a voice. "Leave her alone." I opened my eyes and saw my grandfather standing in the doorway. He was wearing his old army uniform, and his eyes were ablaze with anger. The figure turned to face my grandfather, and I saw its eyes widen in fear. My grandfather raised his hand, and the figure disappeared in a puff of smoke. My grandfather walked over to me and helped me to my feet. He looked at my wound and sighed. "You're going to be okay," he said. "But you need to get out of this house. It's not safe here." I nodded and followed my grandfather out of the house. We never went back, and I never saw the figure again. But I still feel its presence, watching me from the shadows. I know it's still out there, waiting for its chance to strike. I was hanging out with my friends at the mall when we decided to explore the storm drain. It was a popular spot for kids our age, and we had heard rumors about a killer clown that lived down there. We didn't believe the rumors, of course, but we were still curious. We made our way down into the storm drain, and it was immediately clear that the rumors were true. The air was thick with the smell of rotting garbage, and there were puddles of stagnant water everywhere. We could hear strange noises echoing off the walls, and we kept feeling like we were being watched. We finally reached the end of the storm drain, and we were about to turn back when we saw something that made our blood run cold. There, standing in the middle of the tunnel, was a man dressed in a clown costume. He had long, sharp knives attached to his hands, and he was clinking them together menacingly. We screamed and ran back the way we came, but the clown was faster. He chased us through the tunnels, and we could hear him laughing maniacally as he got closer. We finally reached the entrance to the storm drain, and we burst out into the sunlight. The clown was right behind us, but we managed to outrun him. We ran as fast as we could until we were sure he wasn't following us anymore. We never went back to the storm drain after that, and we never told anyone what we saw. But I know what I saw, and I know that the killer clown is